Welcome to another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions podcast. My name is Molly McGrath, and I am the creator of this revolutionary podcast. Okay, so today we are talking about my attorney is impossible to please and why you are not hiring bad people. As many of you know, I have been in the hiring and staffing space for 20 plus years now for small solo, medium-sized law firms. And so often we will hear from people that, you know, when we call them and ask why they're leaving or why they're looking for a new opportunity, we will hear over and over and over again that my attorney is impossible to please. No matter what we do, it's not good enough. And then we'll hear from the attorney / entrepreneur side that, you know, we just have had a bad string of hiring quote unquote bad people. Neither one is wrong and neither side is right. So what does that mean and what to do about it? So let's unpack the attorney's perspective in regards to we are hiring bad people or it's impossible to find good people. I can tell you, in this day and age, probably since 2008, really, when we had, world crisis back then, people started evaluating after the initial shock of layoffs in the economy and things of that nature. People really started to evaluate what they want in their life, what they want in their positions, and the place where they spend the majority of their waking hours, i.e. the workplace. And we have been hearing from people ever since that time, and it's never gone back to be grateful that you have a job. And now that we're in the midst of another pandemic here, about 10, 12 years later, the tonality and the messaging and the mindset of the employee has not changed. In fact, it's gotten a lot cleaner, clearer, and unrelenting, if you will. Meaning that people are saying, I want to work for a company where I get time, attention, and appreciation from my employer. So if you are hiring the right way, and you can go to any of our past podcasts, our books, our blogs, our website, and get unlimited resources in regards to how to hire right and do the best that you can with a pretty certain guarantee, meaning if you're employing some of the assessments such as Colby, Strength Finder, you're doing background checks, social media checks, you're asking some deeper, more powerful questions, bringing them in for a working interview, using Real Talent Hiring with Jay Henderson that I really love lately. The past couple of years, it's been a wonderful tool where it will show you the risks in conjunction with the job title that you're hiring for. So assuming you do all that, my perspective and what we hear from employees is that, you know, I think the reason that it seems like they're bad employees, or that could be the perception, is that their tolerations and their clarity around what their boundaries are in the workplace have never been more profound. And so it's not that they're bad people when, you know, they're making lots of mistakes. I have to repeat myself. They're not getting it. They're not understanding it. Whatever it might be, they're coming in late. These are the common themes that honestly in the past week, conversations that I've had, my experience is that stuff can be fixed. And a lot of times that's happening because so go the coach, so go the coachee. So if they're coming in late, we don't have an employee handbook, or nobody's willing to have the conversation and sit down with them. When attorneys call me and they'll say, you know, I think I need to let so-and-so go because they're coming in late constantly, or they're calling in sick, or whatever it might be, or I'm seeing a lot of mistakes in their work. My first question is, well, how did they handle the conversation when you had that with them? and they say, well, I haven't had a conversation with them, or they've had some version of the conversation that 90% of it was in their head. And when I say role play with me, walk me through exactly what you said, the crucial conversation did not occur. In fact, last Friday, I did an onboarding call with a law firm, so somebody that we placed. It's been about 45 days now. And the attorney started sending me emails. I'm concerned about so-and-so. They're coming in late, all the things that I just laid out. They're making mistakes, things of that nature. I said, great, let's hop on a call. But in the meantime, you do need to have an honest, respectful conversation prior to our call. I gave her kind of a template of how to do it in a very respectful, empowering way, safe manner of checking in what's working, what's not working, and not coming at it from a place of attack. By the time we got on our call just about a week later, everything had been rectified. In fact, when we went through our 45-day review with the new employee and the attorney on Zoom, it was fascinating about how much they had turned around in that 1 week's time of having the conversation. They thought it was clear about the start and stop time, but because a paralegal that was training the person was showing up late all the time, and that was acceptable because they're a quote unquote seasoned employee, they just assumed that that was kind of the standard. Show up when you want and get your work done and go home. The mistakes were because the paralegal who was training the employee was not spending the time with the attorney when we went through what's not working. And the attorney was blown away to hear that the paralegal had blown off the training sessions with the new employee and never setting up those ground rules and those house rules and the tracking and the measurement to debrief, how your training's going, et cetera. That was not in place. So we were able to pivot in so many different areas around the communication, around sticking to our sacred time for internal weekly team meetings, in regards to doing our daily huddles, in regards to doing our growth time on Friday. So if you're not giving people the proper time and attention and feedback and things of that nature, well, of course, they're going to show up like a bad person, so to speak, or a bad hire, or not the right fit. So my recommendation is to make certain that you have consistent, constant communication within your firm. So often I will hear attorneys will call and say, I need a seasoned, or I need an experienced, or I need a seasoned or a senior paralegal attorney, whatever it might be. And I will say to them, so tell me why you need somebody that has this specific criteria of years of experience, et cetera. And 100% will respond because I don't have time to train anyone. And I will come back and say, I can find you somebody who has this experience, but if they don't have the mindset, they don't have the emotional intelligence, they don't have the communication skills and things of that nature, the experience is not going to matter. It's not going to stick. They're human beings. You're hiring human beings, and you need to give them time and attention. And when we do the recruiting side, and people will take us up on their opportunity and say, yeah, tell me a little bit about this position you're hiring for. I'll say, why are you even considering this? And they will say in no uncertain terms that there's no communication here. You're just supposed to show up and do your work, put your head down, and, just get until you're bloody and exhausted, and it's still not good enough. The only time we hear from anyone, it's always to be criticism or to point out our mistakes. Hence why the employees say my attorney is impossible to please. And those are exact words that we hear, and no short of 10 times a week from employees. And that's why they feel that, because it's not necessarily that the attorney is impossible to please. That I fully, wholly understand that's the essence, and that's the tonality, and that's a message that's coming there because of the lack of communication and the lack of standards around communication upfront of what to expect, and having some best practice approaches already instilled in the firm. That's why the essence is always that my attorney is impossible to please. And that's why we feel like we're always hiring bad people. When I have attorneys call me and say to me within the first 5 minutes that I don't have time to train anyone, I will not take them on as a client anymore. Because what that means is they will not adopt best practice approaches. When I talk about having weekly team meetings, when I talk about doing employee reviews, when I talk about putting growth time on the calendar, when I talk to them about, even if you have someone who's been doing your niche specific area of practice for 10 years, 7 years, whatever it might be, the way they did it at the other firm is, while they have the knowledge and while they have the technical legal terms of art and the know-how, so to speak, that's a small percentage of your personal preferences and how you like things done, and the communication style and things that are stylistic and what have you. You still need to give them time, attention, and feedback. They will leave. They will absolutely leave. Even if they have the greatest resume, greatest rap sheet of all the years of experience, they will eventually leave. No doubt about it. If there is not a structure for culture and environment and communication there, you can read all the books out there in regards to best practice approach for communication. But I tell you, it's not that hard. And it doesn't have to be where I see people hiring all these business consultants and traction coaches and all this, where they're spending all this time on all these personality assessments and strategies and team building strategies and things of that nature. But they don't mean a hill of beans if you don't have the structure in place going forward. So that's from the attorney perspective of why you really are not hiring bad people. Yes, if you're following the true hiring process, yes, there's times when you got a bad egg, but you know that within the 2 weeks, probably 30 days max, if you have the best practice approaches of having weekly team meetings and huddles and reviews and things of that nature, very clear, concise, upfront agreement in regards to their goals and their KPIs and things of that nature. You do know in 2 weeks. And so the quicker you could get rid of them and then replace them, and knowing what parts of it didn't work, and be very reflective in regards to your training and your communication and your tracking and your measurements. And or sometimes, yes, it is a bad person, but that's usually an exception, not the norm, if the hiring process is done right. At this stage of the game in 2020, we all know, yes, when you were starting out way back when, that, you just hired the cheapest person that you could find in the beginning. And then, as you grow and evolve, and their social media and all the wonderful resources around there in regards to talent acquisition, at this point, you should have a process in place to weed out the majority of the week. So it's on you, entrepreneur, to give your team time, attention, and setting up those standards around communication and what they can expect. We just had a new hire that we hired. She's been there about 2 weeks now. And she called me last week and she said, I don't know where my boundaries are, what I can say, but the paralegal training me constantly has her door shut and do not disturb on her phone. The attorney constantly has their door shut and do not disturb. And when they are available, they're in back-to-back meetings. So I don't know who to go to, and there's nobody to access here. Everybody is sitting in their office with their door shut and not on do not disturb. And I have a pile of questions that I need to ask. There is no formal training system here. Kudos to her being there that short, and she's a very, very seasoned paralegal with extraordinary experience and competence. And thankfully, I said to her, great, do you want me to facilitate a call? She said, nope, I got it. I just want to make sure. Should I come to you? Should I go to the attorney? What's the ground rules here? And she said, I'll take care of it. Got an email from her this morning saying, we're great. We came up with the system. We're implementing the daily huddle. I'm going to get my dedicated time with them on Mondays and Fridays. I'm good. So having the courage to open up your mouth and to speak into that is critical from the employee side as well as the attorney. You're seeing stuff. You guys know this. You send me the emails, the texts, the phone calls. You're seeing stuff and you're sweeping it under the rug. But the more that you can practice naming it and coming from a place with honest, respectful conversations in real time. Because if you can't have them in the beginning and you're not creating a culture of honesty and a culture of accountability and a culture of holding our feet to the fire, sometimes in spite of ourselves, that really makes certain that we're pressing for action and commitment and constant growth. And we're always driven, discipline, and have integrity. Those should be your ground rules within your law firm. If you have not implemented your rules of engagement, if you've been hanging with me for a while, you know that's something that I have people do up front in the beginning as a team. If you haven't done that in a while or you never have, I highly recommend that you do it now and get a strategic retreat. If you're feeling like you have more bad people than good people on your team, it's time for the power of the pause and to really reevaluate and to look at where your communication structures are, making certain that you all have identified your ground rules and your house rules, and you have strategic retreats, you have the daily huddles, you have your weekly stakeholders meeting. If you don't get that in place and going forward, when you do hire the next person and you add to your team, or if you're replacing someone and you truly do have a bad person, you say, yep, I could check the box on all this, Molly. And no, I really feel like I have some bad eggs here or a bad egg. Then going forward, it's something that you're going to want to instill on day one when you bring that new employee, or actually during the interviewing process, that this is how we communicate. We have a coaching environment, that we always have a calming manner that helps people let go and just to trust in themselves when they're not afraid to use their voice, and that they're have compassion, but also they're passionate about their job and they're willing to speak up, that they, so you're going to set all these different ground rules. I think in the Yes Check book, we have a whole sample of there as well. And you can always email me if you need help with that department. So let's talk about quickly the attorney is impossible to please and why employees think that. And again, it's the same side. It's the of the same coin, honestly, in regards to why employees feel that is because, again, they are not getting the time and attention. So you all are crazy busy. That's never going to change in your practice. And you know that. And if it does, you're in trouble. Then that means that your phone's not ringing and you have no clients to meet with. You want to make certain when you're hiring people and or for the existing people that you have on your team right now, my recommendation, if you don't have an employee review system already in place, or maybe you have kind of an old school one that really does not open the door and shine the flashlight on a coaching mentorship environment type arena, that you sit down with your employees and schedule a review, or maybe even in your stakeholders meeting, you can even say to your team, it is my goal that we really have an open environment here, and we have a cult. Everybody understands we're a culture of change, that it's a safe place for us all to be vulnerable and to be able to speak the truth in an honest, respectful manner. We all want to hold each other accountable to our goals and dreams, sometimes in spite of ourselves. And I am not naive enough to think that possibly that there's this feeling that, attorneys, I know sometimes we have been accused of being hard asses, so to speak. And I just want to give us an opportunity to do an analysis and to kind of power down and to really check in and see how we're doing with our communication. How are we doing with our availability of time? How are we doing with expectations? I've heard this before, that, people saying that attorneys are impossible to please. Is this an essence or feeling that is going on here? What can I do to increase your confidence in the leadership, in the communication, in the way that we are processed? So if you do analysis on kind of the perception, it's number one. Then maybe looking at our people. Number two, our processes. Number three, our planning. And do we have a path and plan and a true north that everybody's aware of? And then from a place of profit, where there's an opportunity, whether incentive-based compensation plan, things of that nature. During this recent pandemic, where people are working at home and or working longer hours, because thankfully you are busy and you're growing still, and depending on what area of law you're working in, but by and large, we've just been hearing from law firms this has been the best quarter they've had, some in the history of their business, which is fantastic because you're solution finders. You are in the personal services industry. And what we've been hearing from the support team, whether it's an associate attorney or paralegal or what have you, that working harder than ever right now, and or working from home, or working in an office environment that might be a little more isolated because of social distancing, et cetera, that it's giving them an opportunity to really reevaluate. And I just going to be flat out honest. I'm hearing from people saying, I've been here for 4 years. I've been here for 5 years. I've been here for 3 years. I've been here for 10 years, whatever it might be. And I'm seeing how hard I work right now. And I just am not seeing where this is ever going to stop. And now that I'm trying to navigate working from home and or, we had to let maybe some people go, and I'm doing the job of 2 people. I'm not complaining. I know I can do it. But the piece of it is that the attorney's not showing up and doing their part. They're not communicating. They're not reviewing documents. They're not honoring the calendar or whatever it might be. And some of these old habits that have been, they're very, very insidious. I'm starting to see that if they're not going to change, and I either have to make a decision to accept it or self-select out because this is no longer a good fit for me. These are the types of conversations that employees are having inside their head, and or hopefully, thankfully, they're picking up the phone and sharing it with me so I can record a podcast to give you guys a heads up here in regards to where you can make some very simple changes. So if you have no idea where your employee is sitting right now, what they're feeling, if they're happy, now stressed out and overwhelmed, those are emotions. And there's some people that just thrive like that. That's not what I'm talking about, but that they feel like the work they do for you is forever appreciated, that you're grateful for it. I don't mean that you can't point out mistakes, because sometimes people won't even point out the mistakes, but the thundering silence that's running around the office is very in stereo. So if you truly, in your pit of your belly, in your bones, know where your employee's sitting and what they're thinking, then this is a beautiful opportunity, an invitation, because if so-and-so leaves, you're going to not get off of the revolving door, the hamster wheel, so to speak. So this is a practice that you really should be intertwining into the fabric of your business and making it a standard within, whether it's taking them to lunch or doing quarterly retreats, just really doing one-on-one employee growth plan reviews, things of that nature. Get them in place, and get them in place now, because we are not at the end of this. We're about, a week or so away from the midpoint of mid-year, which is just incredible to believe. And 2020 has been a very rocky start. I don't mean from a financial standpoint. Like I said, many people have had the best year, best quarter they've had, but just from an energetic and an emotional, and trying to deal with improvising our processes, going online, things of that nature. So if you don't have these things in place from the attorney perspective, and you cannot honestly say that your employee is very happy, that they feel like the work they do is, that you're grateful for it, that you appreciate it, that you acknowledge it. And I don't mean hang up from this podcast and go sprinkling sunshine everywhere and telling them how great they are and that you appreciate them. I mean sitting down and having an adult conversation and checking in and seeing where they're at. What can I do to increase my confidence in you? What's working currently in your position? What is not working? And making it safe and letting them know that up front. This is a statement. I listened to this podcast that Molly recorded, and it was titled, "My Attorney is Impossible to Please." Is this something that you have ever felt? I'm deeply curious. You're not in trouble for being honest, but I want to make certain that I do an audit of my team and make certain that this is not anything that anyone walking around here would ever feel. And then ask them for specific examples. Do not defend it. You know some of the things that you may be doing: not reviewing documents, not replying to emails, not getting your team the information they need. When you do finally have time, constantly pointing out mistakes, but not giving them the resources and explaining the why, not giving them the proper time to set them up for success with changing it. Not monitoring the training if you have other employees that are training. This is a big one. If you have other team members that are training new employees, I cannot say enough. You cannot 100% delegate this. You have to keep your pulse on it. You have to be having separate meetings with each one of them, and then a meeting together of checking in or instilling that, 5-7 minutes within your weekly stakeholders meeting where you're checking in. Don't just assume everything is going right there. So you want a culture of leadership, a culture of communication, a culture of approachability, a culture of, what do I want to say about that? Family, I think. I did an onboarding call this morning with a firm, and the attorney said, when I said, what will make you absolutely delighted 30 days from now when we check in on how this new employee is doing with their goals? One of the things I love that he said, I want her to really feel like she found her forever home and that she feels like she's a part of our family, because that is the first and foremost culture and standard that we have in our rules of engagement, is that we are a firm of family essence. And I just really, really love that. So if you're sitting in a place of feeling like you have a bunch of bad apples and you're constantly hiring bad people, check in on your hiring process. At this day and age, it's not acceptable for you to be feeling like that, because there's no shortage of resources for systems and processes to have a really robust hiring process. Make certain you have open communication, you have standards around communication in your team, and check in with your employees. If you're an employee and you're listening to this and you are feeling like your attorney is impossible to please, you're not off the hook. You have a responsibility as well. When if you've ever called me, I will not do your dirty work for you. I will empower you, and I will give you some very empowering language and non-threatening language and questions to go in to ask. So same thing where you can say, what can I do to increase my confidence in you, attorney, and for you to be confident with me and sharing what's working, what's not working. And by all means, just cut to the chase, cut to the bottom line and say, this is a feeling that I have. And again, not saying you are impossible to please, but I feel this is how I've been feeling. And no attorney is ever going to fire you for saying that. They will be especially if it comes in a respectful manner, and you're saying that from a place of you really want to be able to support them. You want to stay at the firm, you want to grow, and you want to be able to turn it around in any dangers into opportunities, but you willing to dig deep for the truth and the light for all of us. So if you're an employee and you're feeling this way, you got to pull up your big girl or boy pants and go have the conversation. And if you're an attorney and you're willing to really do a thought download and look at yourself, look at your team, look at your culture, look at your standards around communication and your processes and things of that nature, and then go have the conversation with your team. Because I have seen law firms absolutely transform when they're willing to have the upfront conversations and willing, as Good to Great, one of my favorite books says, the health of any organization and the growth opportunities for any organization is fully based on the ability and the willingness to have the fist-pounding conversations. So let us know how you do with this. Good luck. If you need any help, by all means, reach out to us and we will be happy to support you. Until then,